close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and slowly let it out. Imagine yourself far away in the magical lands of ancient times. This is the place where one of humanity's oldest civilizations was born, Egypt. For thousands of years, Egypt shone like a guiding light in human history. At the heart of its greatness stood the Nile River. The Nile was more than just water. It was the source of all life. In the middle of endless desert, it stretched like a ribbon of green. Every year, the Nile would flood, spreading water, minerals, and blessings across the land. To the Egyptians, this was never a disaster. It was a miracle. When the waters receded, what remained was the richest, blackest soil, ready to give birth to new life. Because of this, the Egyptians saw the Nile not simply as a river, but as a sacred gift. For them, it was the gift of the gods. Without the Nile, there could be no Egypt. That is why it was called the gift of the Nile. The people of Egypt shaped their lives around the rhythm of the river. They studied when it rose and when it fell. They planted their crops according to its flow, and they harvested with the turning of its waters. Little by little, they mastered the art of farming. This knowledge allowed them to leave behind the wandering life and settle down. Small villages grew into towns, and towns transformed into city-states. Over time, they did not only grow in farming. Along the Nile's banks, they raised cattle, sheep, and donkeys. From the papyrus plant, they built shelters, boats, and even created one of the earliest forms of writing material. With this, they began to record their thoughts, their harvests, their prayers, the first traces of written history. But life was never only about survival. The human spirit always longs for more. They gazed at the sky, watching the sun rise and set. They studied the stars at night, and in their shimmering patterns, they found meaning. They measured the passage of time, creating one of the world's earliest calendars. It was during this era that belief began to take root. The mysteries of nature stirred their imagination. The flood of the Nile, the rebirth of the sun each morning, the eternity of the stars, these were not accidents. They were signs of hidden powers. And so, the world of the gods was born. Egyptian gods reflected both humanity and nature. They often appeared with human bodies, but the heads of animals. For to the Egyptians, every living being carried a secret truth. Horus, the falcon-headed god, was linked to the sun and the sky. Anubis, with the head of a jackal, guided souls to the afterlife. Bastet, the cat-headed goddess, represented love, protection, and the peace of home. In this way, a rich mythology unfolded. These beliefs bound society together. The gods were not distant. They touched every corner of life. They governed birth and death, harvest and flood, order and chaos. Through faith, the Egyptian people found unity. And from this unity, a new form of leadership would soon rise. At this time, Egypt was divided into two lands, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. For centuries, they remained apart. until at last a great leader emerged. His name was Narmer, also known as Menes. Around 3100 BCE, Narmer united the two lands, bringing Upper and Lower Egypt together as one. This was the true beginning of Egypt's glorious history. The ruler of this new land was more than a king. He was called Pharaoh. To his people, he was not only a political leader, but also the earthly representative of the gods. The suns rising, the rivers flooding, the turning of the seasons, all of it was seen as tied to the pharaoh's divine role of maintaining balance. And so, Egypt entered an age where power and faith were one. An age of stone, of temples, of myths, and of eternity. Take another deep breath now, slowly, because soon we will journey further. We will see how this great civilization began to build monuments of stone, eternal homes for their kings, and symbols of their longing for the afterlife. Take a slow breath in and let it out gently. The Nile still flows quietly through the desert, but now Egypt has changed. No longer are there two divided lands, Upper and Lower. Egypt have been bound together. The age of the pharaohs has begun. Narmer's unification around 3100 BCE was not only a political event. It was the birth of something much greater, a centralized kingdom, perhaps the first true nation-state in human history. Imagine it, a people stretching across hundreds of miles of river valley, all recognizing one ruler, one crown, one destiny. Narmer and the kings who followed him established the foundation of what historians call the early dynastic period. This era, lasting several centuries, was a time of experimentation, of growth, of laying the stones upon which all later Egyptian glory would rest. The divine ruler. To understand this period, we must understand the role of the pharaoh. The pharaoh was not a king in the way we imagine today. He was not only a ruler of people, but the very embodiment of divine order on earth. He represented Mad, the balance of the universe, truth, justice, and cosmic harmony. When the Nile flooded properly, when the crops flourished, it was proof that the pharaoh was fulfilling his sacred duty. If disaster struck, people feared that order itself was disturbed, that the bond between gods and humans was shaken. Thus, loyalty to the pharaoh was not just political, it was spiritual. Pharaohs of this era often depicted themselves as larger-than-life figures. Carvings and ceremonial palettes show them smiting enemies, towering above others in size. This was not only art, it was symbolism. The king was not one man among many. He was the axis upon which all life revolved. The birth of writing. During these centuries, a great invention began to take form, writing. The Egyptians developed hieroglyphs, beautiful symbols that combined pictures, sounds, and ideas. At first, they were used for simple administrative records, to track harvests, to count grain, to mark ownership. But quickly, writing became a sacred tool. It was said that the god Thoth, Lord of Wisdom, had gifted writing to humanity. To To write was not only to record, but to connect with the divine. Scribes became powerful figures. They were the keepers of knowledge, the link between spoken words and eternal memory. With their reed brushes and ink, they filled rolls of papyrus, carving the first layers of Egypt's long literary tradition. Without them, the history of Egypt might have faded into silence. Temples and rituals, religion deepened during this time. Small shrines of wood and reed grew into larger temples of stone. Each town had its local god, but together they formed a vast pantheon, linked under the divine authority of the pharaoh. Rituals were performed daily, offerings of bread, beer, and incense to sustain the gods, who in return sustained the world. Priests carefully observed the stars, predicting the flooding of the Nile. They kept calendars, conducted ceremonies, and preserved sacred myths. Even in these early centuries, we see the beginnings of Egypt's spiritual grandeur, a grandeur that would last 3,000 years. Architecture and monuments, but perhaps the most striking changes of the early dynastic period were in stone. The Egyptians began to experiment with monumental architecture. Kings wanted their names and power to live forever. And so, they built tombs. At first, these tombs were simple rectangular structures made of mud brick, called mastabas. Flat-roofed and sloping at the sides, mastabas were the resting places of rulers and elites. Within them lay chambers filled with offerings, food, drink, jewelry, and tools for the afterlife. For the Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but a journey. The tomb was not a place of decay. It was a home for eternity. Over time, mastabas grew more complex. Walls were decorated with carvings, storage rooms multiplied, and the scale increased. Slowly, the Egyptians were learning to build not just for the present, but for immortality. The first steps toward pyramids. This experimentation would eventually lead to one of the most iconic symbols of Egypt, the pyramid. But in the early dynastic period, pyramids did not yet exist. Instead, architects and builders were pushing their skills, step by step, by studying mastabas, by testing stone as a material, by learning to organize labor forces. They were preparing the way for the great leap that would soon come in the Old Kingdom. Already, one can sense the ambition. To the Egyptians, the afterlife was eternal, and eternity required monuments that could stand forever. The idea of building on such a scale was born here, in these early centuries, when kings first dared to imagine structures that would defy time itself, society, and daily life. Meanwhile, everyday life along the Nile was flourishing. Farmers tended the fields, fishermen cast their nets into the river, and craftsmen shaped pottery, tools, and ornaments. Markets buzzed with trade. Families gathered in small mud brick houses, shaded by palm trees. Music and simple instruments brought joy to evenings. Women played an important role, not only in the household, but in religion and economy. In Egyptian belief, balance balance between male and female was sacred, reflecting the harmony of the universe. This sense of balance permeated all aspects of life, the eternal flow. As the centuries passed, Egypt grew more organized, more powerful, more confident. The pharaoh's court expanded, administration became more complex, and the culture more refined. By the end of the early dynastic period, Egypt stood ready to step into its first true golden age, the Old Kingdom, the age of the pyramids. The Nile continued to flow. The fields continued to yield their gifts. And above it all, the pharaoh watched as guardian of the sacred order. So take a deep breath once again, slowly in and out, because our next step will take us into the age of stone giants, into the great pyramids of Giza, into the dreams of eternity carved in rock. Take a deep breath in and let it out slowly, as though you are releasing the weight of the day. Now imagine yourself standing beneath a vast desert sky. The stars shimmer above you, and in the distance, you see shapes that rise like mountains, not of earth, but of stone. These are the pyramids of Egypt, monuments so ancient, so mysterious, that they have watched over humanity for more than 4,000 years. But before these giants of stone stood upon the desert plateau, there was a beginning, a dream, a vision of eternity that first took shape in the time we now call the Old Kingdom, the age of the pyramids, the step pyramid of Djoser. The story begins with Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler of Egypt's third dynasty, around 2700 BCE. Djoser was not content with the simple mudbrick mastabas of earlier kings. He wanted something greater, something that would reflect the eternal nature of his reign. For this vision, he turned to a man who would become legendary, Imhotep. Imhotep was not only an architect, but also a priest, a physician, and a scholar. His mind saw possibilities beyond the limits of his age. And under Djoser's command, Imhotep designed something the world had never seen before, the first stone pyramid. This pyramid was not smooth-sided, as we know today, but rather a series of 6 great steps rising toward the sky. It stood at Saqqara, near the capital city of Memphis. Each step represented a stairway to the heavens, a path for the soul of the pharaoh to ascend and join the gods. The step pyramid of Djoser was more than a tomb. It was the centerpiece of a vast funerary complex, complete with courtyards, chapels, and ceremonial halls, all built in stone. For the first time, Egypt showed the world its ability to command not only men and resources, but also eternity itself. When the step pyramid was completed, it rose about 60 meters high, towering over the desert, dazzling the eyes of all who beheld it. Imagine the awe of the people looking upon this structure. Nothing like it had ever been built before. It was a statement. Egypt was eternal, the rise of monumental architecture. From Djoser onward, each pharaoh sought to surpass the last. The The step pyramid had opened the door, and there was no turning back. Kings of the Fourth Dynasty would take this dream and expand it to an unimaginable scale. To build these monuments, Egypt needed organization, resources, and faith. Tens of thousands of workers, skilled and unskilled alike, gathered at the building sites. They were farmers during the flood season, but when the fields were underwater, they became builders. With copper tools, sledges, ropes, and sheer determination, they moved blocks of limestone weighing several tons each. It was not slavery, as is often thought, but rather a kind of national duty. Workers were fed, housed, and cared for. They labored not only for their pharaoh, but for their gods, believing that through their effort, cosmic order would be preserved. Each stone lifted was a prayer. Each block set in place was an offering to eternity. The Great Pyramid of Khufu. Then came Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. Around 2580 BCE, Khufu began a project so vast that it still stands as one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world. On the plateau of Giza, overlooking the Nile, he commanded the construction of a pyramid that would dwarf all others. When completed, it rose to a height of about 146 meters, the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Made from more than 2 million stone blocks, each precisely cut and placed, the Great Pyramid of Giza remains a marvel of engineering. Its sides were aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. Its base was nearly level, despite covering more than 13 acres of desert. The outer casing of smooth white limestone reflected the sun, making the pyramid shine like a jewel on the horizon. To the people of ancient Egypt, it was the very embodiment of the sun's rays, a staircase of light leading to the heavens. Inside, hidden passageways and chambers were designed not for the living, but for the soul of the pharaoh. For Khufu, the pyramid was not merely a tomb, it was his vessel for eternity, his bridge to the afterlife. Khafre and Menkaure, Khufu's successors, continued his vision. His son, Khafre, built the second Great Pyramid at Giza. Slightly smaller than his father's, it still stood proudly on higher ground, making it appear taller from a distance. In front of his pyramid, Khafre ordered the carving of a colossal guardian, the Great Sphinx. The Sphinx, with the body of a lion and the head of a king, gazes endlessly toward the rising sun. Its purpose was to guard the sacred necropolis, to watch over the pharaoh's eternal rest, and perhaps to embody the fusion of human wisdom and divine strength. Even today, the Sphinx remains one of the most mysterious monuments on Earth, its weathered face holding secrets of the ages. Later, Pharaoh Menkaure built the third pyramid at Giza. Smaller in scale, it was nevertheless crafted with elegance and precision. Together, the three pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure formed a sacred landscape, a horizon of eternity that still stirs the imagination of all who see it. Daily life in the Old Kingdom, while the pyramids rose from the desert, life along the Nile flourished. Farmers continued to cultivate wheat, barley, and vegetables. Craftsmen created fine pottery, jewelry, and statues. Artists carved reliefs showing scenes of hunting, fishing, and feasting, images meant to bring joy and abundance to the afterlife. Society was carefully ordered. At the top stood the pharaoh, divine and eternal. Beneath him were the nobles and priests who managed temples and estates. Scribes recorded every detail: grain collected, taxes paid, rituals performed. Beneath them were the farmers and workers who formed the backbone of Egypt's strength. Religion touched every part of life. People believed that their actions contributed to the balance of the universe. Kindness, honesty, and respect for the gods were not only virtues, but necessities. For at death, each soul would be judged. The heart of the deceased would be weighed against the feather of Mad. If the heart was pure, the soul would live forever in the field of reeds, a paradise of endless harvests and gentle waters. If not, the soul would be devoured by a fearsome creature, and existence would end. This belief gave life meaning. It gave purpose to the building of pyramids, to the offerings left in tombs, to the prayers whispered each morning. Life was fleeting, but eternity was certain for those who lived in balance with the divine. Art, music, and culture. The Old Kingdom was not only an age of stone, but of culture. Harps, flutes, and drums filled the air with music. Dances honored the gods, while poetry and hymns were recited in temples. Artists perfected the style that we now instantly recognize as Egyptian. Figures drawn in profile, with eyes facing forward, symbols of lotus and papyrus, colors of red, gold, and blue. Every stroke of paint, every carving in stone, was not just decoration, but a form of prayer, a way of binding the mortal world to the eternal, the fragility of greatness. Yet even as the pyramids reached toward the sky, the Old Kingdom carried within it the seeds of fragility. Building such monuments required immense resources: grain, labor, wealth. Over time, nobles grew powerful, priests gained influence, and local governors began to challenge the pharaoh's central authority. Droughts and poor harvests added strain. But for now, in this golden age, the dream of eternity shone brighter than the desert sun. The pyramids stood as proof that human hands, guided by faith, could touch the realm of the gods, a breath of eternity. So breathe once more slowly in, gently out. The age of the pyramids was not only a chapter of stone, but of spirit. Each block carried upward by countless hands was more than a rock. It was a prayer, a promise, a dream of everlasting life. As we leave the shadow of Giza's giants, our journey continues. Ahead lies the brilliance of the Middle Kingdom, the struggles, the hopes, and the timeless river that never ceases to flow, the Nile. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out gently, feeling the calm of the Nile flowing through your mind. The desert remains quiet, yet in the heart of Egypt, life has begun to bloom again. After centuries of change, The Old Kingdom has passed, and with it, the grandeur of the Great Pyramids. But from this transition emerges a new age, a time of rebirth, innovation, and cultural flourishing. This is the Middle Kingdom, a period where Egypt redefines itself, strengthens its borders, and embraces the harmony of order and creativity, the return of unity. Following the decline of the Old Kingdom, Egypt faced political fragmentation. Local governors, known as nomarchs, gained increasing autonomy, and the central authority of the pharaoh weakened. Yet the land's spirit was resilient. Around 2055 BCE, Pharaoh Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty rose from the city of Thebes in Upper Egypt. Through vision, diplomacy, and careful military strategy, he reunified Egypt. The Nile, which had long flowed through divided lands, now ran through a united kingdom once more. Mentuhotep II's reign marked the true beginning of the Middle Kingdom, a renaissance of culture, governance, and spiritual depth. The pharaoh as shepherd. In this era, the pharaoh's role evolved. No longer just a god-king, he was now the shepherd of his people. The ideal ruler was one who balanced divine authority with responsibility to the living. Pharaohs were expected to care for their citizens, ensure the Nile's abundance, maintain justice, and uphold Ma'at. This shift is beautifully captured in Egyptian literature of the time. Tales and wisdom texts from the Middle Kingdom teach lessons of humility, compassion, and good governance. The pharaoh is not distant. He is involved, attentive, a guide for his people. He walks among them, listens to grievances, and ensures that every village along the Nile prospers. Art and literature flourish. The Middle Kingdom is sometimes called the classical age of Egyptian literature. Writing expanded far beyond administrative records and religious texts. Stories, moral teachings, and poetry now captured human emotion, dreams, and fears. Works like the Tale of Sinu explored journeys, loyalty, and destiny, while wisdom texts teach patience, diligence, and respect for the divine. In temples and tombs, art evolved. Reliefs and paintings became more naturalistic. Figures show motion, emotion, and detail unseen in the rigid forms of the Old Kingdom. Pharaohs are depicted in ceremonial splendor, but everyday life also finds its way into tombs, farmers plowing, fishermen casting nets, families enjoying meals. The Middle Kingdom blends the sacred with the mundane, revealing a civilization comfortable in both worlds. Architecture beyond stone. While the Great Pyramids of Giza remain icons, the Middle Kingdom saw innovation in architecture that adapted to new philosophies and needs. Massive temples were built and expanded, often dedicated to gods like Amun, Ra, and Osiris. Mortuary temples and tombs became more intricate, with corridors, chapels, and hidden chambers. The pharaohs of this era were inspired by the idea that life continues beyond death, but with renewed emphasis on moral virtue. Tombs now included detailed inscriptions of prayers, hymns, and instructions to guide the soul safely into the afterlife. art, architecture, and writing merged to ensure that the memory of the deceased and their harmony with the divine would endure. Daily life along the Nile. The Nile remained the lifeblood of Egypt, and daily life revolved around its rhythms. Farmers tended wheat, barley, and flax. Fishermen navigated its waters, bringing food to towns and temples. Craftsmen carved stone, molded pottery, and wove fine linens. Markets thrived with vibrant colors, sounds, and scents. Spices, dried fish, grains, and handcrafted jewelry. The social structure of the Middle Kingdom was carefully maintained. At the top was the pharaoh, divine yet attentive. Beneath him, the nobles, priests, and scribes managed temples, estates, and administration. Skilled workers and farmers formed the backbone of society, ensuring stability and prosperity. Women maintained households, participated in temple rituals, and sometimes held positions of influence. Spiritual life and the afterlife. The Middle Kingdom deepened Egypt's spiritual understanding. Belief in the afterlife became more personal. While pharaohs and nobles still built monumental tombs, ordinary Egyptians could now prepare for eternity through simpler means. Inscriptions, small tombs, and offerings. The Book of the Dead gained prominence, guiding the soul through trials in the afterlife. The weighing of the heart against the feather of Mad became a central concept. Life on earth was not only a gift, but a preparation, a chance to cultivate virtue, wisdom, and harmony. Religion permeated every aspect of life. Offerings were made to gods and ancestors. Rituals followed the solar calendar, and festivals brought communities together. The Nile, ever faithful, was seen as the earthly reflection of divine generosity, expansion, and trade. The Middle Kingdom also marked a period of outward-looking vision. Pharaohs extended Egypt's influence beyond its traditional borders. Fortresses and trading posts were established in Nubia to the south, bringing gold, ivory, and exotic animals. To the east, expeditions reached the Sinai, bringing copper and turquoise. Trade was not merely economic, it was symbolic. Each item, each gift, represented connections between distant lands, affirming the pharaoh's power and Egypt's cultural prominence. Through commerce, Egypt strengthened its resources while also sharing its art, religion, and technology, innovation, and daily wonders. Technology and innovation flourished. Irrigation systems were improved to better harness the Nile's floods. Canals connected cities, enabling easier travel and trade. Architecture explored new stonework techniques. Tools became more precise, and artisans produced objects of remarkable skill. Daily life, though guided by the rhythm of the Nile, was enriched by these innovations. Music and dance brought joy to festivals and ceremonies. Games, storytelling, and communal gatherings strengthened the social fabric. Egypt was alive, not only in stone and ink, but in the laughter, songs, and prayers of its people, the balance of eternity and humanity. Perhaps the greatest achievement of the Middle Kingdom was its balance. Pharaohs governed with divine authority, but also with human care. Art, literature, and architecture reflected both eternity and the fleeting beauty of life. Spirituality guided daily existence, yet allowed personal expression. The Middle Kingdom teaches us that civilization is not only about monuments or kings, but about the delicate harmony between the natural, human, and divine worlds. It is a period where Egypt's soul becomes visible, not only in stone, but in the hearts and minds of its people. A final breath as we leave this age of rebirth. Take a slow, deep breath and let it flow out gently. Imagine the Nile, calm and eternal, carrying the memories of countless generations. Picture the temples, the tombs, the writings, and the songs. Feel the harmony of a civilization that learned not only to command stone, but to nurture life. The Middle Kingdom, with its wisdom, art, and spirituality, stands as a reminder that human creativity, guided by balance and faith, can endure through the ages. And so, our journey continues, moving forward into the next chapter of Egypt's history, the rise of foreign influence, the Hyksos, and the New Kingdom, when the land of the Nile will reach even greater heights of power and splendor. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and let it out slowly, feeling the cool desert air and the gentle flow of the Nile. Time moves onward, as it always has. The Middle Kingdom has passed its golden age, and Egypt faces new currents of change. From distant lands beyond the eastern deserts, new peoples arrive, the Hyksos. They are foreign, yet their presence is not merely a threat. It is a beginning of adaptation, innovation, and transformation. Arrival of the Hyksos. The Hyksos, whose name means rulers of foreign lands, crossed into Egypt from the Levant around 1650 BCE. They brought with them new ideas, new tools, and new ways of life. Unlike the earlier invaders of history, they did not merely conquer, they settled, traded, and gradually integrated into the Egyptian landscape. Their arrival challenged Egypt's traditional ways, but it also sparked progress. The Hyksos introduced the horse-drawn chariot, superior bronze weapons, and new fortification techniques. Egypt, once isolated by the deserts and cataracts, now began to learn from its neighbors. The pharaohs of this era had to adapt, to incorporate new strategies, and to maintain the balance between tradition and innovation. Life along the Nile. Despite these political upheavals, life along the Nile continued much as it had for thousands of years. Farmers tilled the fertile lands, sowing barley and wheat, planting vegetables and flax. The annual flood remained the heartbeat of the kingdom, nurturing crops and sustaining villages. Markets thrived with trade, both local and foreign. Artisans crafted pottery, jewelry, and intricate tools, some inspired by Hyksos designs. Music, storytelling, and dance continued to enrich daily life, blending old traditions with new influences. In villages and towns, families lived close to the land and the river. Children learned to swim in the Nile. Women prepared meals and textiles, and men fished, farmed, and repaired boats. The rhythm of daily life, calm yet purposeful, persisted, even as rulers and armies changed. Political adaptation. The Hyksos rule was concentrated in the northern Nile Delta, while native Egyptian dynasties continued to hold power in Upper Egypt. For nearly a century, these two powers coexisted uneasily. Pharaohs in Thebes, guided by both diplomacy and faith, gradually organized resistance. This period saw innovations in governance and administration. Local governors, scribes, and priests played crucial roles in maintaining order. Fortresses were built, trade networks expanded, and military strategies evolved. The Hyksos challenge forced Egypt to modernize, preparing the kingdom for future greatness. Cultural synthesis. Hyksos influence was not limited to technology and warfare. It extended into art, religion, and everyday life. Egyptian craftsmen adopted new styles of pottery and tools, while rituals occasionally absorbed elements of foreign traditions. The fusion of cultures enriched Egypt, creating a more versatile, resilient civilization. Religious practices continued to anchor life. Temples remained centers of learning, ritual, and social cohesion. Priests observed the movements of the sun and stars, timing festivals and ceremonies. Offerings of bread, beer, and incense continued to nourish the gods, sustaining the cosmic balance of Mad. The lessons of adversity. The Hyksos period, though a time of foreign rule, also taught resilience. Egypt learned to adapt without losing its core identity. Leaders, craftsmen, and common people alike realized that survival and growth depended not only on strength, but on understanding, strategy, and faith. Education and wisdom became increasingly important. Scribes recorded history, laws, and literature, ensuring that lessons of this period would guide future generations. Literature of the time often reflects themes of struggle, morality, and divine order, emphasizing that challenges are part of life's flow, much like the cycles of the Nile, daily life, and spirituality. Even during times of foreign influence, daily routines maintained continuity. Children played along riverbanks, fishermen worked the waters, and farmers measured the soil with ancient precision. Women prepared meals, wove cloth, and tended gardens. Music, storytelling, and festivals carried on, providing joy and cohesion. Religion remained central. Temples dedicated to Amun, Osiris, and Hathor continued to function. Offerings were made, rituals observed, and the guidance of the gods sought. Egyptians believed that despite political upheaval, the Nile, the sun, and the divine order would endure. The end of Hyksos rule. Eventually, native Egyptian rulers in Upper Egypt rose to challenge the Hyksos. pharaohs such as Ahmose I led campaigns to expel the foreign rulers and reunite the land. This victory marked the beginning of the New Kingdom, an era of imperial expansion, monumental architecture, and unparalleled cultural development. But the lessons of the Hyksos period remained. Egypt had learned the value of adaptation, the power of innovation, and the importance of resilience. The kingdom emerged stronger, more organized, and ready to assert itself on the world stage. A time of reflection. Take another slow breath. Imagine the Nile flowing steadily, carrying the stories of countless generations. Feel the sun warming the riverbanks, the gentle rustle of reeds in the breeze. Even in times of challenge, life continued, humble, persistent, and beautiful. The Hyksos era shows us that change is not always a threat. It can bring new ideas, new tools, and new perspectives. Egypt endured because it balanced tradition with adaptation, faith with pragmatism, and life with the eternal flow of the Nile, preparing for the New Kingdom. As the Hyksos were expelled, Egypt looked forward with renewed energy. The pharaohs of the New Kingdom would learn from the past. They would strengthen borders, expand trade, and construct monuments that would surpass even the pyramids. But above all, they would continue the eternal rhythm of the Nile, honoring the balance between the human, the natural, and the divine. Take a final deep breath, in and out. Feel the calm of the river, the warmth of the sun, and the resilience of a civilization that has endured for millennia. The winds of change have passed, and a new era is about to begin, the age of power, empire, and splendor. The New Kingdom of Egypt. Close your eyes, breathe in slowly, and release it gently, letting your mind drift like the calm waters of the Nile. Egypt has emerged from centuries of challenge and transformation. The Middle Kingdom has passed, the Hyksos are expelled, and the land is once again united under native rule. This is the dawn of the New Kingdom, the age of empire, monumental architecture, and unprecedented cultural achievement. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh. The story begins with Hatshepsut, one of the most remarkable rulers in Egyptian history. Around 1479 BCE, she became pharaoh after the death of her husband. What makes her extraordinary is that she assumed full royal power in a male-dominated society, presenting herself as both king and divine ruler. Hatshepsut's reign was peaceful yet ambitious. She focused on trade, culture, and monumental building projects. One of her most famous creations is her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, built into the cliffs of Thebes. The temple is an architectural masterpiece, harmonizing with the natural landscape, with terraces, colonnades, and shrines filled with inscriptions and statues. Trade expeditions, especially to Punt, brought incense, myrrh, gold, ebony, and exotic animals. These journeys expanded Egypt's knowledge of distant lands and enriched its culture. Hatshepsut's reign demonstrates that leadership can combine strength, diplomacy, and vision. Thutmose III, the warrior pharaoh. Following Hatshepsut, Thutmose III became pharaoh, known as the Napoleon of ancient Egypt. His reign brought military expansion, securing Egypt's borders from Nubia in the south to Syria in the north. He organized armies with skill and precision, yet his campaigns were guided by strategy as much as by strength. Thutmose III's victories ensured that Egypt became the most powerful empire in the ancient world. Tributaries sent gold, silver, and luxury goods, enriching the state and supporting monumental building projects. Temples, tombs, and cities flourished, reflecting the wealth and confidence of the new kingdom. Daily life and society. Despite the grandeur of kings and armies, life along the Nile remained intimate and consistent. Farmers worked the fertile banks, growing wheat, barley, vegetables, and flax. Craftsmen created jewelry, pottery, and statuary of incredible detail. Markets thrived with fish, bread, linen, and spices. The social structure was complex. At the top stood the pharaoh, divine yet active. Nobles, priests, and scribes managed administration, temples, and resources. Skilled workers formed the backbone of the economy. Women managed households, participated in religious rituals, and sometimes held positions of influence. Children learned both practical skills and moral lessons, preparing for their roles in society. Religion and the divine order. In the New Kingdom, religion permeated every aspect of life. Temples were centers of worship, learning, and administration. Priests observed the stars, maintained the calendar, and performed rituals to honor gods like Amun, Ra, and Osiris. Pharaohs were considered the earthly embodiment of gods, maintaining Ma'at, the balance of the universe. Offerings of bread, beer, incense, and flowers nourished the gods, ensuring prosperity for the living. Festivals celebrated the Nile, the sun, and the cycles of life, bringing communities together in joy and devotion. Art and architecture. Art in the New Kingdom reached new heights. Walls of temples and tombs were adorned with vibrant reliefs depicting gods, pharaohs, and daily life. Statues captured realism and divine symbolism simultaneously, showing both power and compassion. Architecture included massive temples like Karnak and Luxor, grand mortuary complexes, and carefully designed tombs in the Valley of the Kings. These structures were not only functional, they were symbolic, expressing eternity, divine order, and the wealth of the empire. Education and knowledge. Education expanded, especially for scribes, priests, and administrators. Writing, mathematics, and astronomy were studied carefully, preserving knowledge for future generations. Libraries and temple schools became centers of learning, ensuring that wisdom, history, and religious understanding were passed down. Science and technology flourished. Irrigation systems were perfected, tools improved, and crafts refined. Medicine advanced, guided by both practical experience and spiritual belief. Knowledge was seen as a gift from the gods, essential for maintaining harmony on Earth. Trade and diplomacy. Trade reached unprecedented levels. The empire interacted with distant lands, exchanging goods, ideas, and cultural practices. Luxury items like gold, incense, ebony, and exotic animals arrived from Africa, the Near East, and beyond. These connections strengthened Egypt economically and culturally, making it a hub of ancient civilization. Diplomacy was equally important. Pharaohs maintained alliances, negotiated treaties, and sometimes married into foreign royal families. These strategies ensured stability and prosperity, allowing the empire to focus on art, culture, and spiritual life. The spirit of the people. Amidst grandeur and empire, the spirit of daily life persisted. Children played along the riverbanks, fishermen navigated the waters, and farmers tended the fertile lands. Music, dance, and storytelling brought joy to communities, while spiritual practice connected everyone to the eternal rhythm of the Nile. The new kingdom balanced the divine, the political, and the human. Pharaohs were gods on earth, yet they guided the people with care. Temples and tombs reflected the eternal, while daily life maintained the temporal. Art, literature, and architecture were expressions of both beauty and devotion. A breath of eternity. Take a slow, deep breath and let it flow out gently. Imagine the sun rising over Karnak, casting long shadows across temples and obelisks. Hear the gentle lap of the Nile, the soft chatter of markets, the distant songs of priests in ceremonial halls. The new kingdom stands as a testament to human ambition, creativity, and faith. Through art, architecture, literature, and devotion, the people of Egypt left a legacy that endures to this day. As we leave this age of power and expansion, let your mind rest on the eternal Nile. Its waters continue to flow, carrying memories, dreams, and lessons from millennia past. Ahead lies the next chapter of Egypt, the later New Kingdom, the reign of Tutankhamun, Ramses II, and the twilight of an empire. Take a deep, calm breath in and exhale slowly, letting your thoughts drift like the gentle waters of the Nile. Egypt has reached the height of its power. The new kingdom shines brighter than ever, with an empire stretching far beyond the river's edge. At its center stands Ramses II, the Great, a pharaoh whose reign will become legend, whose monuments will defy time, and whose influence will touch every aspect of life along the Nile. Ramses II, the great pharaoh. Ramses II ascended the throne around 1279 BCE. His reign would last over 6 decades, a remarkable span that allowed him to leave an indelible mark on Egypt. Known as Ramses the Great, he was not only a warrior, but also a statesman, builder, and devoted worshipper of the gods. His leadership combined ambition with wisdom. Military campaigns secured Egypt's borders, ensuring safety and stability. At the same time, Ramses invested in monumental construction, art, and religion, creating a lasting legacy that intertwined human achievement with divine authority, military power, and diplomacy. Ramses II is famous for his military leadership, especially the legendary Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites. Though the battle was fiercely contested, Ramses framed it as a great victory, reinforcing his authority and divine favor. Diplomacy also played a critical role. Treaties were negotiated, marriages arranged, and alliances maintained. Egypt's influence stretched across the Levant and Nubia, and trade flourished. These political strategies ensured that the empire remained strong, prosperous, and culturally dominant. Daily life along the Nile. Despite the grandeur of Ramses' reign, daily life continued along the familiar rhythms of the Nile. Farmers planted wheat, barley, and vegetables in the fertile floodplains. Fishermen and boatmen navigated the river, bringing food and trade goods to towns and cities. Craftsmen carved stone, molded clay, and wove textiles of exceptional quality. Markets were lively, filled with color, sound, and aroma. Fresh bread, spices, pottery, gold jewelry, and vibrant linen. Music and dance enlivened festivals, bringing communities together. Children played along riverbanks, learning both practical skills and cultural traditions from their elders. Temples and monumental architecture. Ramses II's reign is synonymous with monumental construction. Temples, obelisks, statues, and statuesque carvings rose across Egypt, embodying both devotion and ambition. The Temple of Abu Simbel is perhaps the most iconic. Colossal statues of Ramses guard the entrance, and the temple itself is aligned with the sun, illuminating its inner sanctum on specific days of the year. At Karnak, he added massive pylons, halls, and obelisks, creating one of the largest sacred complexes in history. Temples were not merely religious centers, they were cultural hubs, centers of learning, administration, and artistry. Even tombs reached new heights of sophistication. The Valley of the Kings became the resting place for pharaohs and nobles, with intricate murals depicting journeys to the afterlife, divine guidance, and the eternal harmony of the cosmos. Religion and the divine order. Ramses II maintained close ties with the gods. He considered himself the earthly embodiment of divine power, upholding mad truth, justice, and cosmic balance. Priests performed rituals to honor gods such as Amun, Ra, and Osiris, ensuring the Nile's fertility and the prosperity of the empire. Festivals were grand affairs, combining devotion with community celebration. Offerings of bread, beer, incense, and flowers nourished the gods. Music, chanting, and dance amplified the spiritual energy, linking the mortal realm with the eternal. Art and literature. Art reached its zenith during Ramses' reign. Reliefs depicted not only pharaohs and gods, but also scenes of daily life, battles, and religious ceremonies. Colors remained vivid, symbols were precise, and proportions carefully measured. Statues captured both power and grace, merging human skill with spiritual ideals. Literature flourished as well. Texts celebrated achievements, recounted histories, and offered moral and spiritual guidance. Stories were written to inspire loyalty, courage, and respect for the divine order. Knowledge, art, and devotion were inseparable threads in the fabric of Egyptian life, society, and governance. The social hierarchy of the New Kingdom was complex but stable. The pharaoh was supreme, followed by nobles, priests, scribes, and skilled craftsmen. Farmers and workers formed the backbone of the economy, providing sustenance and resources for monumental projects. Women played essential roles in family, society, and religion. They participated in rituals, managed households, and occasionally held administrative or ceremonial positions. Children were educated in both practical skills and moral principles, ensuring continuity of culture and wisdom. Trade, economy, and innovation. Egypt's economy thrived under Ramses II. Trade extended to Nubia, the Levant, and beyond, bringing gold, ivory, spices, and exotic animals. Agricultural innovations, irrigation improvements, and skilled labor ensured abundant harvests and steady resources. Technological progress accompanied cultural growth. Construction techniques advanced, art became more refined, and tools became more precise. Knowledge was treasured, preserved in temples and schools, guiding the next generation of leaders and artisans. The legacy of Ramses II. Ramses II's reign is remembered not only for monuments and military campaigns, but for stability, cultural richness, and spiritual devotion. He embodied the ideals of the pharaoh, a divine ruler, protector of the people, and steward of the eternal order. Through his efforts, Egypt reached the pinnacle of the New Kingdom. Temples, tombs, and cities reflected the harmony of human skill and divine inspiration. The Nile, flowing gently as ever, sustained life, culture, and belief, linking past, present, and future. A breath of eternity. Take a deep, calm breath and let it out slowly. Visualize the sun rising over Abu Simbel and Karnak, casting golden light across statues, obelisks, and temples. Hear the gentle sound of the Nile, the laughter of children, the songs of priests. Feel the harmony of an empire at its zenith. Ramses II and the New Kingdom stand as a testament to human ambition, faith, and creativity. Life and eternity coexist here, along the banks of the eternal river. As we leave the age of Ramses, let your mind rest on the calm, enduring Nile. Ahead lies the twilight of the New Kingdom, the slow decline, and the transitions that will carry Egypt into its final chapters. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath in, and let it out gently. The sun still rises over the Nile, yet Egypt faces change. The empire that once stretched from Nubia to the Levant begins to waver. Powerful pharaohs like Ramses II have passed, and the central authority slowly diminishes. Yet along the river, life endures, as it has for millennia. The decline of central power after the reign of Ramses III and the later rulers of the 20th dynasty, Egypt experienced political instability. Multiple claimants to the throne emerged, while local governors and priesthoods gained power. The once unified empire became fragmented, with some regions thriving while others struggled. Despite these challenges, the cultural and spiritual foundations of Egypt remained strong. Temples continued to operate, scribes preserved knowledge, and artisans carried on their craft. Daily life along the Nile retained its rhythm, with the river sustaining both people and crops. External threats. During this period, foreign incursions became more frequent. Libyans, Nubians, and Sea peoples tested Egypt's borders. Military campaigns were organized to defend the land, but the empire could no longer project power as it once had. These challenges forced Egyptians to adapt. Fortifications were strengthened, alliances sought, and new military strategies developed. Even in times of uncertainty, the belief in the divine protection of the pharaoh and the gods provided hope and resilience. Continuity of daily life. Amid political turbulence, daily life along the Nile remained remarkably consistent. Farmers tilled the fertile soil, fishing and cultivating crops to feed their communities. Craftsmen continued to produce pottery, jewelry, and textiles of intricate design. Markets thrived with the trade of local and imported goods. Children played by the river, learning the skills of their parents, while families maintained traditions of music, storytelling, and celebration. Life moved forward, steady and gentle, echoing the timeless flow of the Nile. Religion and spirituality. Religion remained central to the lives of Egyptians. Temples were maintained, priests performed rituals, and festivals celebrated gods and pharaohs alike. The balance of Mad was still revered, even as the political landscape shifted. Funerary practices continued to emphasize the journey of the soul. Tombs, coffins, and texts ensured that the dead could navigate the afterlife safely. Offerings of bread, beer, and incense sustained divine favor. Through faith, Egyptians found stability amidst uncertainty. Art and culture, art and literature, preserved the richness of Egypt's heritage. Temples, tombs, and palaces retained intricate carvings and vibrant paintings. Stories of gods, pharaohs, and daily life adorned walls, reminding all who entered of the enduring values of wisdom, courage, and piety. Even as resources became strained, artisans adapted. Small sculptures, personal amulets, and painted tombs reflected creativity and devotion. Music and poetry continued to play a role in both public and private life, sustaining the spirit of communities along the river. Education and knowledge. Scribes continued to be the guardians of knowledge. They preserved historical records, religious texts, and administrative documents. Education ensured that wisdom, moral guidance, and practical skills were passed to the next generation. Temples served as centers of learning, where astronomy, mathematics, and medicine were studied. Despite political instability, the intellectual and spiritual life of Egypt endured, offering continuity and guidance. Trade and economy. Trade adapted to changing circumstances. The Nile remained the lifeline for transportation and commerce. Local markets thrived, and goods from Nubia, the Levant, and beyond continued to arrive, though in smaller quantities than during the empire's peak. Economic adaptation was vital. Farmers diversified crops, artisans created portable works of art, and communities relied on cooperation and shared knowledge to maintain prosperity. The spirit of resilience. The late New Kingdom demonstrates the resilience of a civilization. Though the empire weakened, the Nile and its people endured. Communities maintained cultural traditions, spiritual practices, and daily routines. Art, music, and storytelling persisted as threads connecting the past, present, and future. Egyptians of this era understood that life along the Nile was a cycle of continuity, and that even as rulers changed and borders shifted, the river and its blessings remained eternal. Looking forward, as we take a final deep breath, in and out, picture the Nile flowing through fertile plains, past temples, towns, and fields. Hear the soft murmur of life continuing, the songs of children, the prayers of priests, and the quiet labor of farmers. The New Kingdom, once at the height of power and glory, now passes into history. But its cultural, spiritual, and artistic legacy endures. Temples, tombs, art, and wisdom preserve the memory of a civilization that thrived along the river for millennia. The journey of Egypt continues into the late period, marked by foreign invasions, internal reform, and enduring faith. Through all changes, the Nile flows on, a silent witness to the resilience, creativity, and eternal spirit of its people. Close your eyes, take a long, gentle breath, and release it slowly, feeling the calm of the Nile flowing endlessly. Egypt has survived centuries of glory, invasion, and renewal. The New Kingdom's height is behind, yet life along the river endures. The land now faces new challenges. Foreign rulers arrive, empires rise and fall, yet the people and the Nile remain steadfast. Early late period and the Sate revival, around 664 BCE, during the 26th dynasty, Egypt experiences a cultural revival under the rulers of Sais. These pharaohs sought to restore past glory, strengthening the military, fostering trade, and promoting arts and literature. Temples were renovated, statues restored, and religious practices renewed. This revival shows Egypt's enduring spirit. Even after centuries of foreign rule, Egyptians maintained cultural pride. They honored the traditions of their ancestors while adapting to a changing political landscape. Schools for scribes thrived, and temples became centers of learning and community cohesion. Life along the Nile. Through all political changes, the Nile remains the lifeline of Egypt. Farmers carefully cultivate wheat, barley, vegetables, and flax, following the rhythm of the river's flood. Fishermen and boatmen navigate its waters with skill, sustaining towns and cities. Markets bustle with trade, filled with goods from Egypt and distant lands. Craftsmen create pottery, jewelry, textiles, and religious artifacts, blending traditional Egyptian styles with foreign influences. Music, dance, and festivals bring communities together, maintaining continuity and joy amidst change. Children play along riverbanks, learning skills from their elders. Families preserve storytelling, crafts, and spiritual practices, ensuring that each generation carries forward the legacy of the Nile. Persian conquest and administration. During the 27th dynasty, Persians conquer Egypt, incorporating it into the vast Achaemenid Empire. While political control shifts, life along the Nile continues. Local administrators, priests, and scribes maintain daily routines, and temples continue to function as centers of spiritual and social life. The Persians also bring innovations in administration and taxation. They respect Egyptian religion and culture to some degree, which allows Egyptian traditions to survive. While foreign rule challenges national identity, Egyptians adapt, preserving core values and cultural continuity. Religious and cultural continuity. Religion remains central throughout the late period. Temples are active, with priests performing rituals, maintaining sacred sites, and guiding the community. Offerings, festivals, and prayers ensure the favor of gods like Amun, Ra, Osiris, and Hathor. The Egyptian belief in the afterlife continues to inspire art and architecture. Tombs are elaborately decorated. Inscriptions guide the soul, and burial rituals maintain the link between the living and the divine. Art during this period reflects both tradition and adaptation. Reliefs, statues, and painted scenes echo the past, yet sometimes incorporate stylistic elements from foreign rulers. Through this blending, the Egyptians maintain their identity while responding to a changing world. Trade, economy, and innovation. The Nile continues to sustain Egypt's economy. Agriculture provides food for local communities and surplus for trade. Egypt trades with Nubia, the Mediterranean, and the Near East, exchanging gold, papyrus, linen, and exotic goods. Craftsmen innovate within tradition. Pottery, jewelry, textiles, and tools reflect both skill and adaptability. Knowledge knowledge is preserved in temples and schools, ensuring continuity in writing, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Even under foreign rule, Egyptians adapt to new economic realities, maintaining a stable, thriving society along the river. The Macedonian arrival and cultural exchange. By 332 BCE, Alexander the Great arrives, ushering in a new chapter in Egypt's history. Though foreign, the Macedonian presence brings new ideas, trade connections, and urban planning innovations. The founding of Alexandria marks a fusion of Egyptian, Greek, and later Hellenistic culture, yet the Nile continues to flow unchanged. Farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, and priests continue their routines. Temples remain centers of worship and learning. The continuity of daily life, culture, and spirituality demonstrates Egypt's resilience and adaptability across centuries of foreign influence. Daily life and spiritual life. Throughout the late period, life continues peacefully along the Nile. Children learn skills from parents. Farmers cultivate fertile lands. Fishermen navigate the river. And artisans craft objects of beauty and utility. Religion provides structure and hope. Festivals, prayers, offerings, and temple rituals maintain the connection between humans and the divine. Music, dance, and storytelling continue to enrich life, preserving culture and joy in the community. Even amidst political change, the Egyptians uphold tradition. They honor ancestors, maintain social harmony, and celebrate the eternal rhythm of the Nile. Reflection on resilience. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the calm of the Nile and the enduring spirit of the people. Despite foreign conquest, political instability, and shifting empires, Egyptian culture persists. Art, religion, education, and daily life continue along the banks of the river, connecting generations across millennia. The late period reminds us that a civilization's strength lies not only in its rulers or armies, but in the resilience of its people, the continuity of its culture, and the eternal flow of its lifeblood, the Nile. Looking ahead, as you exhale, imagine the river carrying the memories of pharaohs, priests, artisans, and farmers alike. The late period sets the stage for the Ptolemaic era, where Egyptian and Greek cultures intertwine, culminating in Alexandria's splendor and the final chapters of an ancient civilization. Though the world changes around them, the people of Egypt endure. Life along the Nile flows with a steady rhythm, carrying wisdom, faith, and beauty into the future. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath in, and exhale gently, letting your mind drift along the calm, flowing Nile. Egypt has entered a new age, one where the familiar rhythm of the river meets the influence of distant lands. Alexander the Great has passed through, and his successors, the Ptolemies, now rule the land. The culture of Egypt blends with Greek ideas, creating a unique harmony of art, knowledge, and daily life. The arrival of the Ptolemies, following Alexander's conquest in 332 BCE. His general Ptolemy Isoter became the ruler of Egypt. The Ptolemies established their capital in Alexandria, a city designed with grandeur, learning, and trade at its heart. Alexandria's lighthouse, the Pharos, would become one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guiding ships along the Mediterranean coast. Despite Greek governance, native Egyptian traditions continued. Temples, festivals, and religious rituals persisted along the Nile. Priests, farmers, artisans, and scribes maintained their roles, preserving continuity amidst political change. Daily life along the Nile. Life along the Nile remained gentle and steady. Farmers cultivated wheat, barley, vegetables, and flax, guided by the river's annual flooding. Fishermen worked the waters, providing sustenance for towns and cities. Craftsmen continued to produce pottery, jewelry, textiles, and tools, blending traditional Egyptian techniques with new Greek influences. Markets were vibrant, filled with goods from Egypt, Greece, and beyond. Music, dance, and storytelling enlivened communities, creating shared experiences that transcended language and origin. Children learned skills from parents and elders, absorbing both Egyptian and Hellenistic knowledge. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh among the Ptolemies, Cleopatra VII stands as the most famous and intriguing ruler. She ascended the throne in 51 BCE, navigating a complex world of politics, diplomacy, and culture. Cleopatra was highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, and deeply aware of Egypt's traditions. Her reign emphasized both diplomacy and domestic stability. She sought alliances with powerful Roman leaders while maintaining her role as a pharaoh, the embodiment of divine authority on earth. Cleopatra's image appears on coins, temple reliefs, and in literature, portraying her as both a political strategist and a custodian of Egypt's spiritual and cultural heritage. Cultural fusion. The Ptolemaic period saw a remarkable blending of Greek and Egyptian traditions. Temples incorporated Greek architectural elements, while Egyptian religious practices persisted. Festivals honored both Greek and Egyptian gods, reflecting a dual cultural identity. Artistic expression evolved. Sculptures, paintings, and reliefs combined Egyptian symbolic style with Greek naturalism. Alexandria became a center of learning, housing the legendary Library of Alexandria and attracting scholars from across the Mediterranean world. Religion and spiritual life. Despite foreign rule, religion remained central to Egyptian life. Temples functioned as centers of worship, education, and social cohesion. Priests continued rituals for gods such as Amun, Ra, Isis, and Osiris. Offerings of bread, wine, incense, and flowers ensured divine favor and harmony. The afterlife remained a guiding principle. Tombs, inscriptions, and funerary rituals preserved the belief that life extends beyond death. Egyptians maintained their spiritual practices while engaging with Greek philosophy and learning, creating a rich, layered cultural landscape. Trade, economy, and innovation. Trade flourished along the Nile and across the Mediterranean. Egypt exported grain, papyrus, linen, and gold, while importing wine, olive oil, and luxury goods from Greece and beyond. Alexandria's harbors became bustling centers of commerce, connecting cultures and ideas. Technological and scientific advancements thrived. Astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and engineering advanced, blending Egyptian empirical knowledge with Greek theory. Education remained a pillar of society, ensuring the continuity of learning across generations. Society and governance. The Ptolemies maintained a complex society. At the top was the pharaoh, divine and political leader. Nobles, priests, and administrators oversaw temples, cities, and trade. Farmers, craftsmen, and workers provided the economic foundation, ensuring stability and prosperity. Women continued to play significant roles, managing households, participating in religious rituals, and occasionally influencing political decisions. Education combined practical skills with cultural and moral teachings, ensuring continuity and resilience in a changing world. Daily life and community. Along the river, life maintained a gentle rhythm. Children learned to navigate the Nile. Farmers worked the fertile land, and artisans crafted objects of beauty and utility. Communities celebrated festivals, shared meals, and engaged in music and storytelling. Even as politics shifted and foreign rulers came and went, the spiritual and cultural heartbeat of Egypt persisted. The Nile connected people, ideas, and traditions, sustaining the flow of life across centuries. Reflection on continuity. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the calm of the Nile, flowing through time, past pharaohs, scribes, and scholars. Egypt's culture endures, resilient against conquest, adaptation, and change. Art, religion, education, and daily life preserve the memory of an ancient civilization, blending tradition with innovation. The Ptolemaic period shows us that a civilization's strength lies in its ability to adapt while maintaining core values. Life along the Nile continues, a testament to human creativity, faith, and perseverance. Looking toward the end, as you exhale, imagine the Nile carrying the stories of farmers, priests, artisans, and pharaohs alike. Cleopatra's reign marks the final chapter of independent Egypt. Soon, Roman rule will bring a new era. Yet the legacy of millennia, the culture, art, religion, and wisdom remains alive along the river. Through all changes, the Nile flows on, a witness to the eternal spirit of Egypt, its people, and its enduring journey through time. Close your eyes, take a long, gentle breath in, and exhale slowly, letting your thoughts drift like the calm flow of the Nile. Egypt has entered a new chapter. after the end of independent rule with Cleopatra VII, the land comes under the authority of Rome. Yet life along the Nile continues with remarkable continuity. Farmers, artisans, priests, and scholars carry forward traditions that have endured for millennia. Roman governance and administration. Under Roman rule, Egypt is carefully organized as a province, crucial for its grain, resources, and strategic location. Roman governors oversee administration, taxation, and military security. Cities like Alexandria thrive as centers of commerce, scholarship, and culture. Despite foreign authority, Egyptian daily life retains its rhythm. Local administrators, priests, and community leaders maintain order, ensuring that traditional practices, festivals, and spiritual observances continue uninterrupted. Life along the Nile. The Nile remains the lifeblood of Egypt. Farmers cultivate wheat, barley, flax, and vegetables, guided by the annual flood. Fishermen navigate the waters with skill, providing sustenance to towns and cities. Craftsmen continue to create pottery, jewelry, and textiles, blending Egyptian techniques with subtle Roman influences. Markets buzz with trade, offering local produce and imported goods from across the Roman Empire. Music, dance, and storytelling enrich communal life. Children learn practical skills, cultural traditions, and moral guidance from elders, continuing the legacy of education along the Nile. Religion and spirituality. Egyptians maintain their deep connection with the divine. Temples remain active, priests perform rituals, and festivals honor gods such as Amun, Isis, Osiris, and Horus. The cycle of offerings, bread, wine, incense, and flowers, sustains the favor of the gods and preserves cosmic harmony. Even under Roman oversight, Egyptians maintain funerary practices. Tombs, inscriptions, and rituals ensure that the soul journeys safely through the afterlife. Spiritual continuity reinforces cultural identity and daily stability. Art and cultural adaptation. Art and architecture evolve subtly under Roman influence. Traditional Egyptian motifs persist in temples, tombs, and private homes. Reliefs and statues reflect continuity in symbolism and style, while Roman artistic techniques occasionally appear in urban settings and public buildings. Literature and scholarship flourish, especially in Alexandria. The famous Library of Alexandria, though partially diminished, remains a hub for study, translating and preserving knowledge from multiple cultures. Astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and philosophy continue to be valued and taught. Society and daily life. The social hierarchy blends Egyptian tradition with Roman structures. The pharaoh is no longer present, but local priests, nobles, and administrators guide the community. Farmers, craftsmen, and laborers sustain the economy. Women manage households, participate in religious rituals, and influence social life. communities maintain continuity in festivals, marriages, and religious celebrations. Music, dance, storytelling, and games provide joy and cohesion. The pulse of daily life remains connected to the river, the sun, and the cycles of the seasons. Trade and economy. Egypt's economy thrives under Roman oversight. Grain, linen, and papyrus are exported across the empire. In return, imported goods, luxury items, and cultural influences enrich Egyptian cities. Alexandria becomes a melting pot of ideas, languages, and trade. Technological knowledge, particularly in agriculture and irrigation, remains highly developed. Craftsmen and artisans maintain high standards, ensuring that both functional and decorative objects reflect skill and tradition. Education continues to be valued, preserving knowledge for future generations. The Nile as eternal witness. Throughout the Roman period, the Nile remains a constant. Its waters sustain crops, transportation, and life. Families, communities, and cities grow along its banks, carrying forward the culture and knowledge of ancient Egypt. Children learn to respect the river, observe the stars, and understand the cycles of nature. Farmers work patiently with the land. Fishermen navigate the currents, and artisans continue their meticulous craft. Daily routines, festivals, and spiritual practices continue unbroken, bridging the gap between past and present. Reflection on resilience. Take a deep, gentle breath. Imagine the Nile flowing past temples, markets, and homes. Hear the laughter of children, the songs of fishermen, the chants of priests. Life continues, calm yet purposeful, amidst foreign rule. Roman governance cannot erase centuries of tradition. Egyptian culture, religion, and daily life persist, demonstrating the resilience and adaptability of a civilization that has survived conquest, change, and the passage of time. Looking forward, as you exhale slowly, visualize the sun setting over the Nile, casting golden light across fields, temples, and homes. Though Egypt is now part of the Roman Empire, its people, their knowledge, and their traditions endure. The Roman period bridges ancient Egypt to the later Byzantine era, setting the stage for new cultural, religious, and political changes. Yet, the Nile flows on, a silent witness to human life, continuity, and the eternal spirit of Egypt. Close your eyes, take a gentle, deep breath in, and let it out slowly. The Nile continues its endless journey, flowing through centuries of change. The Roman Empire has divided, and now Egypt rests under the influence of Byzantium. Though rulers change and empires rise and fall, daily life along the river endures, quiet and resilient. The Byzantine era, in 395 CE, when the Roman Empire split, Egypt came under the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire. The new rulers maintained strong interest in Egypt, for its grain was vital to feeding the people of Constantinople. administrators governed cities, while local communities carried on their rhythms, anchored by the Nile. Temples that once echoed with hymns to the gods now slowly gave way to new forms of worship. Christianity spread across the land, blending with local traditions. Old temples became churches, new monasteries appeared in deserts and along the river. Yet the essence of Egyptian spirituality, seeking harmony, peace, and eternal life, remained unchanged. Christianity and spiritual transformation. By the 4th and 5th centuries, Christianity grew deeply rooted in Egypt. The faith offered comfort and a new vision of eternity. Monks and hermits retreated into the deserts, creating the beginnings of Christian monasticism. Their lives of simplicity, prayer, and contemplation echoed the ancient Egyptian tradition of seeking closeness with the divine in quiet, sacred spaces. Churches rose in villages and cities, becoming centers of community and learning. Festivals and gatherings remained joyful, filled with music and shared meals, just as in ancient celebrations. Faith united communities, sustaining them in times of challenge and transition. Daily life along the Nile. Despite shifts in religion and politics, the rhythm of life along the Nile remained steady. Farmers cultivated crops, fishermen cast their nets, and craftsmen shaped pottery, textiles, and tools. Markets thrived with trade, carrying goods along the river's length and out into the wider Mediterranean. Children learned skills from their families, just as generations had before. They listened to stories, some of ancient gods, some of Christian saints, absorbing wisdom that linked past and present. Life carried on, a blend of continuity and change, the spirit of continuity, even as temples became churches and old deities gave way to saints and angels. The deep Egyptian sense of sacred balance persisted. The desire for harmony, for peace, and for eternal connection endured. The people of the Nile knew that while rulers might change, the flow of life, learning, and faith would remain. Monasteries became new centers of knowledge. Scriptures, philosophy, and hymns were preserved in manuscripts. Education continued, bridging ancient traditions of learning with Christian devotion. The flame of wisdom remained alive. The Arab arrival. In 641 CE, Arab forces entered Egypt, bringing with them Islam and a new cultural chapter. Yet, just as with earlier transitions, daily life along the Nile adapted smoothly. Farmers continued their work, markets bustled, and communities preserved traditions of family, music, and celebration. The Arabic language slowly took root, blending with Egyptian customs. New styles of architecture appeared, with mosques rising alongside older churches. Spiritual life expanded, weaving together ancient heritage, Christian devotion, and Islamic faith. The eternal Nile, through Byzantines and Arabs, through temples, churches, and mosques, the Nile flowed unchanged. Its waters nourished fields, sustained villages, and inspired spiritual reflection. Generations continued to live by its rhythm, planting, harvesting, trading, praying, and dreaming. The people of Egypt, resilient and wise, embraced change while holding to continuity. Their culture, art, and faith adapted without losing the essence of harmony that had defined them for thousands of years. Reflection on endurance. Take a deep, calming breath. Feel the timeless flow of the Nile, carrying the stories of pharaohs, priests, monks, and imams alike. Egypt reminds us that civilizations may transform, faiths may evolve, and rulers may pass. Yet the soul of a people rooted in the land and the river remains. The Byzantine and early Arab periods mark the bridge between ancient Egypt and the living Egypt of today. In this continuity, we see the true strength of a culture that has endured for millennia. Closing the journey, as you exhale gently, imagine the river stretching into the horizon, reflecting the sun, the moon, and the stars. Along its banks, temples, churches, and mosques stand as symbols of resilience and faith. Our journey through 180 minutes of Egypt's history has carried us from the dawn of civilization to the meeting of worlds. And through it all, the Nile has remained, a quiet witness to the eternal spirit of Egypt.